A wheelchair is a lot more than a couple of bike tires and a leather seat, especially if you can't get around without it. Zaya Tong visited a small group of engineers, artists, and wheelchair users who are redesigning chairs so they're nimble and light enough for basketball, fencing, and ballet.
There are 2 million wheelchair users, and they're looking toward that next piece of technology that can improve their freedom of movement.
I've learned to love being kind of a nerd in a couple ways. You know, I started out hating math and wanted to do only sports. I was kind of a jock by nature.
Paul Schulte is one of the greatest wheelchair basketball players in the world. Over the past 10 years, Paul has not only led the U.S. Paralympic basketball team to world championship medals, but he's also become a leader in designing athletic wheelchairs.
I was in a car accident when I was 10 years old. It was a head-on collision car accident, and I had a seat belt over my lap, but it didn't have the shoulder harness in the back seat. So I kind of just went forward really fast and fractured a low vertebrae and became a spinal cord injury. My dad told me something real cool when I was growing up. My dad said, you know, I hate to break it to you, son, but you're not going to be able to work construction. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, haha, yes, I'm not going to be able to work construction. He said, computers are becoming the way of the future. He said, you need to learn how to type. You need to learn how to be able to interface with a computer so that it doesn't matter whether or not your legs work or not. It's your brain that's earning you an income. So I kind of took that and ran with it.
Paul ran with it all right, earning a degree in mechanical engineering, and then landing himself a job with Invacare Top End, one of the world's leading manufacturers of athletic wheelchairs.
It was my chance to help design the products that I had been using since I was a kid. And that's really the fun part, is if you kind of work for the candy store and you get to mess with the recipes yourself, that's awfully fun.
Designing an athletic wheelchair is different than an everyday chair. It must be able to roll extremely fast and make quick turns without tipping over. For Paul, that means altering the chair's center of gravity to meet the demands of the sport.
Your center of gravity is pretty much your center of mass. If you were able to hold perfectly still, there's an imaginary point that if you hung yourself by a string, you wouldn't move at all, where all your body mass, the average, comes together in one point.
The center of gravity should lie directly over the axle and the wheels. By designing a chair where the seat can slide horizontally, users can more effectively distribute their weight across this area, maximizing the wheelchair's stability.
Depending on where that point is in relationship to your wheels is how fast you can spin. So if you have a chair that's set up real aggressively to spin, then when you take a spin, you'll just keep going.
Paul showed me how engineering and basketball meet. The center of gravity on his chair is perfectly fine-tuned. Check out the moves he can do just by shifting his weight and twisting his body.
And take a shot.
Woo! Paul and his teammate Jeremy also demonstrated other ways these design features can let their chairs become an extension of themselves.
Jeremy and I are strapped in 3 separate places across our hips, across our knees, and across our feet. And so by the time we're strapped in, we're one with the chair. If I make any movement at all of my shoulders, my chair moves. And it also comes in handy when you flip over. So when you flip over, the play is going to move on without you, so you got to learn to get up quick. So me and Jeremy can show you.
You can roll around the floor, the chair comes right with you. You pretty much just...
Wow.
And you're back up.
But the more I got exposed to engineering, the more I fell in love with it. And so I have definitely put a pocket protector on my Christmas list before, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Come take me on if you got a problem with that.
Paul's designs are driving Invacare Top End's line of chairs.
This one's a basketball chair. You can see in the front it's got a wing around the front, so when they bump into each other they don't get tangled up. This one's a tennis chair, kind of similar to the basketball chair, except you can see the front is open. Unlike the basketball chair, you don't need a bumper playing tennis. One thing both chairs have is an anti-tipper on the back so you don't flip over. Keeps you in your chair.
Okay.
And then the racing chair. Really, this is a wheelchair, even though it doesn't look like one, but it has a hand rim on the wheel, just like a regular wheelchair. It's just much smaller, so you get more speed. It's a very small chair.
But most wheelchairs are not designed with jocks in mind.
You want to provide as much mobility back to this person as possible, but you need to make it simple to operate, because you've got to remember they've got a medical condition or an injury that may limit their ability to do that. So that's really the challenge. You want something that's very capable, very durable, in some cases very sophisticated, but it has to be very simple to use.
In the old days, in the early days of power chairs, we took a manual chair and literally bolted motors to it. And that gave you a power chair, but it had a very large turning radius and was very cumbersome to use. In our power chairs, we're providing people the ability to traverse very tight negotiating spaces indoors, whether it be inside a vehicle or inside their home, as well as have the ability to traverse different obstacles and terrains outside.
That's always a trick, is you have to have suspension to make it compliant to drive down the road, much like your car does, so it rides nice. Everything that Pride makes for mobility is a little electric vehicle. All the energy is provided by batteries, storage batteries that are in the vehicle, and that provides all your steering and all your propulsion. And when you go to slow down, that energy is captured in regeneration by the motors, and it recharges those batteries.
So just like a hybrid?
Exactly like a hybrid. Some people have circulation problems. They may need to recline or tilt or level their body out or raise their feet. We have to be able to build that into the chair for them, so not only they're mobile, but they can actually meet their medical needs while they're being mobile. You always design the functionality first. You get it to be able to do exactly what you need it to do. And then you sit down and you design with the stylist what it's going to look like. Because this is going to be used by someone who wants to have that represent their being. When they sit in this chair, that's them. Some of the styling is, for instance, very athletic, very outgoing people. They want something that doesn't look like grandma's wheelchair. They want something that looks like maybe something to be used in a sports activity.
Advances in wheelchair tech are tearing down the barriers that once stood between the physically disabled and sports. The next stage of wheelchair design are intelligent chairs.
When you look at mechanical engineering, typically most engineers who graduate work in the aerospace industry, in the automobile industry, and rehab engineering is a new field compared to those industries, but it's just as exciting because you work with robotic devices, you work with wheelchairs that use sophisticated technologies.
And this one looks pretty high-tech right here, robotic arm?
This is a robotic arm that our graduate students are working on, and the need for individuals that typically use power wheelchairs or have severe disabilities that might not be able to open and close doors, pick up objects, even in a work environment, be able to do certain tasks. This robotic arm would be able to, through the joystick or even voice control, be able to enable that person to access their environment.
Perhaps the one chair that gives him the most pride is the one that he and his students designed for the university's dance department. That's right, a wheelchair specifically designed for dance. It's a hands-free chair that responds to subtle movements of the user's body, a piece of technology that may open the world of dance to the disabled. This prototype is currently being used by the Rolling Dance Chair Project, a troupe of mixed ability dancers testing whether the chair can meet the demands of modern dance.
So that was kind of the main idea, was how could we free up the upper body to move as openly as possible. So the way this works is if I lean forward, the chair moves forward in the space. If I lean back, if I turn, then the chair also moves with the body motion of the person in it.
And you look like you're gliding.
And so then we start, mixing other chairs in there, and, this is how we all start, dancing together.
Traditionally, wheelchairs have always had a negative stigma about it. I think as society, we've looked at wheelchairs as being confining. But really, what we'd like to do is the opposite, use wheelchairs to allow people to participate in various activities in society.
The physically challenged who share in these breakthroughs are pushing their own boundaries, and they're helping move an entire population toward lives of greater self-reliance. For Wired Science, this is Zaya Tong.